what's the aliveness that's here? What's the interest? What? Like we get to on this Sunday, you could be anywhere, but you choose to like push the button and come join the five of us. What is it? What's alive for you today? And let's just do kind of a short version. We'll get everybody, then we'll do a little dive together. We'll see where we all go. Elizabeth, can we start with you?
Hey everybody. Um, some days, some mornings, I get to, as self and presence, welcome a part that, and it's usually Sunday mornings, a dear part that has a fear of joylessness. So welcoming that, companioning and welcoming that part as a self and presence, which is a vast space that can welcome all parts, and all parts are welcome.
Thank you. We hear Elizabeth say there's a fear, a part that's a fear of joylessness that's being welcomed. What's your version of that fear of joylessness? It might be a part that feels some heaviness. Or if you've seen the movie Inside Out 2 movie or Inside Out with these little aspects of us that are in our head, like maybe there's an aspect of that that's here for you. Maybe it's sadness, it's anxiety, it's fear. Like what, as we hear Elizabeth say, a fear of joylessness, what does that touch in you? Is there a sense of maybe you're driving with a parking brake, a little resistance? And what would that be within you that's the resistance? And lastly, when we hear Elizabeth say that, is it a problem that there's a part there that has a fear of joylessness? Or do we hear that part and there's just a sweetness with it? Oh, I know that part. There's just love for it. And can we see the innocence of that aspect of Elizabeth? And really, is it a problem? Thanks, Elizabeth. Raymond, what's here for you?
Hi, Sid. I'm over in Scotland, just in case anybody doesn't recognise that fact. Um, and, you know, what Elizabeth said, what that makes me turn towards is, so in a relationship that I'm in, which is it's a couple of years, and I was with my ex for almost 30 years, and that ended about 4 years ago. And what I'm conscious of is that, and even although I've had lots of counselling, psychodynamic therapy, and lots of different things, I'm throwing some of this out there as general terms, but I still need to relate to my insecurities. The insecurities that I have. Not that my partner's doing anything in particular. These are just things that rise up in me. And what I'm learning, Sid, in that, and maybe, these things, they come and visit us, our little friends, the inside parts of us, they come back. They and I suppose that's where I'm aiming at here, is that I'm not meant to make them go away. And so what I'm learning is, even again, I'm sliding down that pathway towards 60. And it's just more of the same, which is just learning to love myself, especially when I'm frightened or insecure. And I can recognize that that might be related to something in the past, but I don't tend to travel too far back with that. I'm just learning to be with those parts from maybe what we all would recognize as that self in me that's the one that sees everything, the one that sees all these parts, and also, if I may add, finally, the one that's able to love all these parts. And I'll use the word acceptance is synonymous with love. So that's where I'm at, Sid. Just, I have many, many little inner children that will come and visit me in little patterns. And I want to just learn to love them more and more. And that's just an ongoing process that I don't think I'll ever get out of. And I don't want out of it, because that's experiencing life.
Wow.
Was that for all of us? As we each inspire and facilitate the group, what's you? We hear Raymond sharing that. Love these little parts, the insecurities and fears that arise in him, which Raymond describes as the same as acceptance, as love and acceptance. And when you hear him say that, do we all have a part, like a fix-it part? Maybe it's a psychotherapy part, one that has different skillful means for healing the system that might come up. It's like, oh, okay, we can address that. We can fix that. Here, like Raymond shared it a little differently, where he was sharing when these come up, he doesn't go, I think he said something like too far. He doesn't travel too far back. Doesn't travel too far back. So there's in not having a sense of going back in time to heal, to meet, to relieve, to unburden. But instead, what I was hearing was a sense of this acceptance, this love of what's arising, the insecurities that arise. Like, can we love them and accept them just as they are? And for some of us, that's the hardest edge of this whole game, right? It's like, can you accept, is it okay if they don't change, if they stay that way forever? Like, Raymond, I'm nearing 60. Is it like if they stay forever, and when he's nearing 70, it's like, oh, the same ones, oh, they're still here, they're home here, they're welcomed home here. When you hear that, do you have a fixer part that's like, no? A spiritual achiever is like, no, we need to, that's why I'm here. We need to heal these aspects of us. We need to relieve the pressure. But what about Raymond's way of just accepting and loving and being with? How does that play in each of us? Raymond, any final words? Did I do all right with that?
No, that was a fair summary. I'll just leave that there just now. That's enough for now.
Thank you. And what about that? Like, can we feel the tension between the accepting, the loving, the being with what is, and the like traveling back in time to kind of repair, fix? And like both of those are welcome, but just to notice the sense of the choice that's there. Woo! Okay. Before we go to Susan, as we're doing this, let's just shake it. You can just shake it off a little bit, because we're just hanging out together. It's Sunday. We're playing. We're with 5 friends, and nothing needs to be done. Oh, wow. Hey, Susan.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, first of all, Sid, I want to say thank you so much for these groups. I've only met you a week ago. I've come to everyone.
Yay.
Like your
Please
shadow.
Keep coming. Keep
Well, I'm
coming.
away for a week. Yeah, I'm going to give you a break, but I just want to. They have just been so helpful to me. I can't really, and so regular. It's just an amazing practice for me. I've got to say, or whatever you want to call it. You might not, but it's just. Thank you for facilitating it, and to everyone for their contributions. That's really makes it rich. But thank you so much. So yes, Raymond's check-in. It's kind of where I'm at, really. So I was kind of going, oh, nice. Acceptance. And I think there's a sort of part of me or self or someone that kind of says, well, what if this is acceptable? What if we can accept this too? So when experiences come, it's like there might be a little bit of contraction or resistance. And it's like, but why not this? There's a sort of trust in the system now. It's like, well, perhaps this is possible to be here too. And it's revolutionary because I think in that there's a natural unburdening, actually. And I think it also makes sense as to why I've lost some interest in my psychotherapy practice, which is, it's been trauma focused and finding the earlier memories or whatever in EMDR or whatever. I use IFS too, but I think that's why this is my evolution. I think I'm not so interested in the story, and it's where I'm at anyway. So that was beautiful to hear Raymond kind of checking in. And I think I had that thought on a dog walk earlier today, that's been a shift for me. And there's it's beautiful. There's a part of me or is self that just says, what if this is accepted? Can you open up to this too? Can you just open a bit to this? And then it just flows. The energy flows. I think parts are unburdened. And it's just life happening. And also with Elizabeth, the part that doesn't want to lose the joy reminds me of the part I got in touch with the other day, which is the part that longs for self, and it just loves self. And it's just like, well, how lovely to have parts that keep reminding us that self is there and self is joy, even if it's a quiet joy. That's possible, kind of. It's kind of a beautiful thing to have a part that's sort of knocking on the door a bit sometimes, perhaps. Perhaps that's beautiful too. That's it for me for now. Oh, apart from I'm also exploring this emptiness and fullness kind of self, the big spacious empty self and the sort of more embodied present self. It kind of playing around with that.
Yes. Thank you, Susan. Where did that take us as we followed Susan? Where does it go? Her this too. Can this be welcomed, accepted too? And what do we find when there just is a continual yes to that, to this too? What opens? And there just is acceptance. And the answer to this too is yes. What happens? And then Susan shares about her psychotherapy practice and addressing trauma, and that there's perhaps something different that we're playing with here. It's a little different flavor. How did that translate in your system for how you're being with your parts? Susan describes that she works as a trauma psychotherapist, and then there's what we're doing here. How do you have, does that discernment play in your system? Is it like a doing versus a being? Is it more of the Raymonds meeting what's here now and loving and welcoming and finding the self, in contrast to some kind of doing to get something? And where do those two kind of come together? Where do they all dance in this dance of Leela? Where is all of that? Just this joy of life. If we go back in time, like in Raymond's system, and we go back and like, oh, let's visit that, this rock that's holding something, that's held, and it's being just met and welcomed by love, and contrast to just staying here and welcoming what's here. And lastly, and who knows if we'll go where we're going to end up going to get today, because we have so much material, like what Susan just shared. And lastly, he says her curiosity about self, the sense of the spacious emptiness. Do we all know that the spacious emptiness of our nature of beingness, spacious emptiness, and then this embodied presence? Yesterday or a couple days ago, Susan was calling this embodied alive presence. Embodied alive presence, in contrast to spacious emptiness that some of the speakers describe. Oh, those are just the two flip coins of the same, two sides of the coin of the same, the emptiness and the fullness. And you find there's a preference. What do your parts prefer? Is there a preference of your parts? Okay, that's so much. Is everybody doing all right? Anything bubbling? Anything's wanting to be shared before we go to Antonio? This is all so much as we just start playing together. Now, before we go to Antonio, just to notice, how are you? How are you? Like, what's coming up? What parts are coming up? It's like, whoa, could I really follow? Like, Susan said so much, and my understanding that I'm going to remember that, what she said about spaciousness and embodied alive presence. There's an understanding part here. Is there some discomfort here? Is there a spiritual achiever? Is there a part that's like maybe a little bored? Come on, Sid, let's take a dive. Let's do something different. Like what's here? What's here? Or is there a part thinking about, wow, it's Sunday, I want to go outside, or I want to go get a sandwich? What are the parts in the foreground that are here for you? How is precious aliveness, life moving for you in thoughts, feelings, and sensations that we label as parts? And then what's it arising in? What's the space? What's the background? What's the beingness? What's the flavor of it? Is it the space that Elizabeth was describing that just meets everything? With Susan's description, is it more the spacious emptiness or the embodied presence? Is it more stillness or more like a fullness of love and acceptance? What is this beingness? And does it include connectedness? All right, let's see. Antonio, what's here for you this morning, today, this afternoon in Europe?
Hey, well, lots.
Oh,
Yeah, I could relate to so much of what everyone was sharing. At some point, I even felt like, connecting to each of you in each one of your screens. It's a bit like, it's almost like seeing yourself through, through another person's words, and it reminded me of that, that idea that we shared last week about, the shared self-energy. Like, it's still so much easier for me to, to relate in a much more compassionate way. I have parts that are a lot more critical to the parts of me that do the same things that I see other people talking about, and by just listening to them and having these parts like being like really understanding, oh yeah, that makes, I know that, even though that's not okay within me for some parts, it seems to be okay in other people. And so yeah, there's still a lot of uneasiness, like discomfort. Like there's a bit of an abstract conflict. There's like a sense of there's a war going on, and it's not like very very defined, but there's I think it was Raymond who mentioned that he was him. He said he doesn't need to go too far back, and it made me think of how there's places that we've lived in earlier on in our lives that still exist within our systems, right? Like it's almost, or it feels as if we had somehow absorbed the parts that were in conflict within those situations, and they're still playing out that conflict inside of our systems, and that's a lot of what is going on right now. And there's
What's that like? What's that like, Antonio? We all can relate to this, the sense of parts in conflict, polarities, even a sense of a war inside between maybe it's a yes or a no, a shoulds. What's it like having that occur inside? But then for all of us, as we feel Antonio, it's not like he's frazzled and there's all this anxiety. As you feel his system, you can feel the self, the beingness that's there. You can feel the space. And even in the midst of that, this war is happening. What's it like to have both of those happening at the same time, or having the war occur within the space of you?
Today it feels particularly challenging because I sense that a lot of parts within my system are really taking it out on this other part that they see as what you would usually refer to as a spiritual achiever, although they call him a spiritual performer, in the sense that they accuse him of being like a self-like part, a part that wants to do good and then wants to do the work of self, and they feel like this part is failing, and so there's a lot more, they're not being nice to him. And so I feel like, like I could be blended with this part, although I feel like there's some sort of equanimity towards all of them, but these parts do not see it like that at all. So it's a bit confusing for me right now. I don't know if I'm making myself.
Oh, yes. So I have a question for all of us. As we hear Antonio describe this, there are a lot of parts that are taking it out on this that they're calling the spiritual performer. This tension, this war. How do you all see this in Antonio's system? How do you see that? Lots of parts being upset, disappointed, maybe even angry, war with the spiritual performer. How do we see that in his system? How do you see it? And then when he says there's an equanimity towards all of this, how do you visualize that? What's the equanimity? What's the space, the context that this is all being met in? How do you see that in Antonio? And where's the equanimity coming from? Is it like just the space, the openness? Where's the equanimity? Where is that? How do we see this in his system? And then, Antonio, how does your system make sense of this? When you as you describe all these parts that are upset with the spiritual performer, is the spiritual performer like really big? Is it like an authority? Or is it kind of off in the corner? And are they surrounding it? Are they riding after it like an American Western with their, gotta get there? Oh, we're coming after you. They're on their horses riding after. What's it like? And where's the equanimity? How's that all play?
It's just a feel. I don't know. I think I'm only referring to. I don't think I feel differently towards them. I know that some of them have more uncomfortable experiences, like, you can really, I mean, there's lots of very uncomfortable sensations going on. But I feel like when I talk about them and what I sense, and I don't think I'm judging any of them, honestly.
So let me check with everybody in this one. What Antonio is describing, there's a sense there's some okayness with what's happening inside of him. As you were hearing the struggle inside of him, is there a sense of, oh, come on, we're in this group. We should help him get relief from this. We should help relieve it. Or did you want to help relieve it? Or was there a sense of okayness with what was occurring? That there was a sense of war happening in Antonio? Almost like what Susan was describing, this too, could even this be acceptable? Could even this be okay? Even the sense of war that's occurring inside Antonio. And this is, when we speak of Antonio, we're speaking of all of our systems. Even the sense of war that's happening in us, is that okay too? Could that be okay? Do we need to have our therapist part come in and try to help? Or can even that be welcomed with this okayness that Antonio's describing, the discomfort? As we hear him describe discomfort, are we wanting to help give him relief from that discomfort? Or is there more a sense of joining him in, being kind of welcoming that, being the space of the discomfort? And at the same time, to have compassion for our capacities for discomfort for all of us. Like, at what point does the discomfort become too, enough? I don't want to, it's reached our capacity when this war is happening inside. And so what is your capacity when it's like, okay, that's enough. I need to go turn on the TV. I need to go get a distraction. That's why we have these wonderful parts in IFS. We call them firefighters. They kind of take us away from it. And often Gemma, who's kind of a professional, all of this, is laughing because she knows that often we see the firefighters as a problem when they come and take us away. But I want to suggest that they're like the superheroes. They know when we've reached capacity and they're like, okay, time to go do something else. Any kind of final things with all this, Antonio, as you've been taking us to this? Once again, you've been opening the door for all of us to this really beautiful place.
No, it feels
Mhm.
it feels good to share with you guys. Thank you.
And then just lastly, I just want to say just one more thing about the firefighter, about the capacity, about this is enough. I don't like this. I need a break. When we hear that, and I'll just speak from my part, there's my part. I've had enough. I want a break. I want to go get a protein bar or go call Elizabeth or something to play. And it's like, can you find compassion for that part and see the innocence of the part that says enough? I need a break. Because otherwise, what happens when we don't allow that to happen in our system? When perhaps the spiritual achiever says, no, we're just going to be with all of this. We need to do what Susan's doing, like this too, and just accept everything and welcome everything. That's what we have to do because that's our spiritual work. It's like, oh my God, what happens when, well, let's see what Gemma goes with this. She's a facilitator of all of this that we're doing here. And like, Gemma, how do you make sense of all of this? What's happening for you?
Uh, Yeah. Oh my gosh. Just thank you all so much. And thank you, Sid. What beautiful reflections on where I'm at right now. The reason why I was smiling, Sid, for the mention of firefighters, because that is what is alive and present in my system right now. And the war really resonated. And yeah, just everything that everybody shared, really. And Elizabeth, when you shared about forgive me, I can't quite remember your exact wording about the fear of joyless. I heard one of my firefighters pop and went, yes, that's what I'm worried about as well. Like, if we do, it's bank holiday here in the UK, Sunday going into Monday, and it's kind of, yeah, some people, you know, enjoy the extra day off and might go out drink alcohol or whatever. And yeah, there's like definite firefighter parts surrounding my system that I've just been kind of being with, and everything that you said is just like totally where I'm at right now. So I'm so grateful to you to you all, and just being with it, just being observing it, and just that slight shift in perception of, yeah. So for me, Sid, when I often do your work, it often takes me, the image of outer space comes, and my parts may be suspended in sort of bubbles or things like that. And often, like, the perception shift is just sort of taking, I guess, the attention, not the attention off, just maybe broadening that perception of actually of the space, you know, of you know, what qualities, the boundless qualities, and what do those parts sort of suspended in those bubbles need. I think because I can be very aware of my system and what's going on and being the observer, and but actually there's something, what this is helping me to kind of be with even more, is that just that broadening of awareness of, like, yes, awareness is here, and what do you need parts. And of course it's all, you know, it's all welcome and present. And yeah. And what did you say then, Sid, about the did you say tolerance of the firefighters? I don't know if you use that word tolerance, but like that. Yeah, because I'm certainly feeling that in my system right now, and sort of leading up to this call of, yes, they want something to happen. They want, and it's like, well, let's just be with it. And it's interesting, Antonio, you said about the spiritual achiever. You didn't use that word, but I was like, right, that's just, yeah. So added another kind of layer to it all. So I don't know if I'm making much sense. I'm making sense of my own sort of system, but yeah, forgive me if it's all just coming out a bit wonky. But yeah, there's definitely firefighter activity around that are, yeah, seeking joy and want something to do. Maybe it's boredom or something, I don't know. But yeah, I hope, yeah, I'll leave it there.
Wow.
Thank you. Great to connect with you again, by the way.
Oh, same here, Gemma. Wow. Where did that go with us for you? What Gemma shared. What's the sense of, she's shared, there are these firefighters here in her system. And not just, what if it can go beyond accepting them to even a sense of celebrating them? Like here, seeing the kind of the innocence of them and how they're, you know, in IFS, there's a sense of no bad parts. Everything's here for our benefit. They're doing their very best for us. Like, can we see the innocence of the firefighters? Notice we have aspects of us that make them wrong, right? That, like, what are you doing? Why are you leaving? Why are you going and doing that? Why are you turning on TV for 3 hours? I mean, I love Netflix. I'll just disappear for half a day. Like, why are you doing that? And there's the wonderful firefighters. That's because we need, you know. And then what? But that's a good question. The why is really wonderful question. It's what Gemma was pointing to. with like, what do they need? What do you need? Almost saying to a child, like, what do you need? It's like the nicest question if someone really asks you, what do you need? What do you want? That's the sweetest question. And if we're meeting our parts that way, which is what Gemma kept pointing to, she was pointing to as we come together, there's a helpfulness here, kind of opens up the space. She was describing the sense of the boundlessness that opens, like this sense of an awareness that beingness is here. And as that openness is here, then as we hear, become aware of the parts, or Raymond describes the many little parts that show up in his system. It's like, what do they need? What do they want? Why are they showing up? Right? If a part's showing up, it's because it wants something. There's something that's wanted there. There's a need there. What does it want? What does it want? Wanting to be heard, wanting to be seen, wanting safety, wanting peace, wanting flow, wanting okayness. I'm wanting connectedness. I'm wanting safety. What is it that the parts are wanting? What is it the firefighters are wanting? Right? In me, they're just, I want a break. I'm wanting some relief. I'm wanting just to be able to relax. What
Mhm.
is it that your parts are wanting for all of us? What is it that your parts are wanting? The ones that are here right now, what are they wanting? What are they longing for? What is Antonio's spiritual performer? What is it wanting? What is the part wanting? What is Elizabeth's fear of joylessness expression part? What is that one wanting? What's it wanting? What are your parts wanting? What are they really wanting? And this is where it becomes really fun. This is kind of the non-duality part of it, so that some people label non-duality, is when we hear that longing and we're like, oh, it's wanting peace, wanting relief, it's wanting okayness. And then we ask our system, what's most like what's being longed for that's here now? And the joylessness for the spiritual performer, for the firefighters that want to get away. What is it that they're really longing for? For the one that just wants to welcome everything, for the one that wants to be okay with everything, wants to find that okayness, that acceptance. What is it that they're really wanting? And what's most like that for each of us that's here now? What's most like peace that's here? What's most like causeless okayness that's here? What's most like acceptance? Just one more thing. Then we're gonna go back to Elizabeth for a minute, because I kind of cheated you guys with Elizabeth. Most of you don't know her. She only spoke for like a minute, and I don't want to cheat everybody of Elizabeth here, and but but this, can your parts feel it? This is a big deal in the game, when the parts start to get that what they're longing for, that they can touch it here, that they don't have to go out and make a good grade or win something or get approval from their friends or be honored or make $10 million or get a new car or have a partner that's perfect. When the parts in their longing, whatever their longing is, can they sense that some of what they're longing for is right here? This safety, this okayness, this peace. This is what we call the tipping points, when the system starts, in IFS we call it updating as well. The system starts to get it, that what it's longing for, that much of that can be found right here in the very nature of its being. Gemma, any kind of final words to bring this all together that you were sharing with us?
Sorry, I couldn't find my mute button then. No, I think I just wanted to name as well just what was coming up for me when you were sharing, Antonio, the war inside, and you mentioned the polarities and this tussle, and just, yeah, I get it. Like, my sister was like, yeah, like, didn't feel so alone when we're in these spaces, right? It's like, oh, thank goodness. And then, that shift of, and what do we need? And can we be what these parts need? And for me then, Sid, and something that I think I continue to work on. It doesn't always happen, but work in progress here of then being self-led, then making the self-led decision of whatever it is that we're with, and I think that, I don't know, for me, yeah, it's a work in progress, but I think that's another piece certainly here that yeah, that I can hear my part say, like, well, what are we going to do then? So I think yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks, Sid.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Wow, beautiful, Gemma. What's it like, as Gemma points us back to Antonio's system and the sense of the war inside, what's it like when we really find okayness with that? There really is Susan's, is that okay? Is it okay? Is that okay? Is it okay that there's a war going on inside, that there's a polarity, a tension, a yes and a no, a discomfort? What happens when we really find an okayness with that? And this was, I love it because this is, I mean, I kind of pushed the edge with the title of this week when I was talking about like living beyond conflict. But there's something real there. Like if we can really find an okayness with what's here inside of us, with the conflict that arises inside of us, and what seems to occur once we got that okayness, like it really does open to see the innocence of the parts that are battling. We really see if we can see the innocence of those parts within us, even ones that come off really strong and are really angry, if we can see the innocence of that, then how can we, then you just can't help it out in the world when someone says horrible things to you. It's just, you just see the innocence. It's just the sweetness. And this is where we go beyond an us and them. And it's just this, it just happens. All right, back to, because we don't want to miss the gift of Elizabeth here. We kind of missed it today. We just got a little piece. Elizabeth, how you doing? What's happening with you with all of this?
Oh, well, overall, just so nice to be really appreciating this group and being here because I've been able to attend. So that's overall just like, damn, this group is so good, This is like, just grateful because the stuff in this group, like I take it away with me, but I need the reminders, and it's like the best. Yeah, so it's interesting. What is the part needing? I love that curiosity place. Because like the Sunday morning part that like is anxious what's going to happen today and joylessness. Like if from the conditioned point, what does that part need from the conditioned point of view? Oh, well, that, I would say that part needs joy or something to look forward to. But really, I see awareness sees that it's connection. That part is the joy, and that connection is really right here, like in self and presence. Like we just go start petting the kitty cat, or we go out and swing on our swing, or a connection with me as self and presence with that one is the joy. But it's also in this group there's connection, and that's joy. So, and that's different than I feel like a conditioned perspective that would have said, oh, this part needs something external to look forward to, like, oh, she needs something to look forward to. So it's not a, dreary, oppressive Sunday. Like that's not really true. It's an interconnection or connecting with others that helps me connect internally. If that made any sense at all.
When we're aware of this part that has this Sunday morning part that has a kind of a fear of joylessness. Oh my, we're going to be kind of Sunday in this joylessness. That when you connect with the longing of that part, when you really hear that part, when we hear that version of that in all of us, right? This whatever the sense of lack is that's here, whatever the loudest sense of lack, that's what Elizabeth's pointing to in her system, I think. It's like the loudest lack that's perhaps here right now, this joylessness. What's the loudest one in each of us? And as you hear that, just a sense of what it's longing for, and then to notice what's here, almost like it's a child, and you're just hearing what it's needing, and it's just, and the beingness is here, like, and so Elizabeth, you mentioned connectedness and just kind of the joy that isn't from experience, from getting anything, it's just here. And I'm wondering what is able to be glimpsed here now as far as something that would be helpful for that part, and give that sense, that part maybe a sense of okayness or a sense of home is here. Is it connectedness? Is it joy? Is it peace? And yeah, what's that like? And can the part feel it? And if it doesn't, that's okay too, because we can all relate to this. Parts, you might be in like this most wonderful space, right? You've got everything you ever wanted, and you're surrounded by love and you're feeling love, and you still have parts that are like, I hate this. I don't want to be here. I want to disappear. And is that okay? If we have parts that are like that, can they be welcomed and accepted just the way they are? So that might be this part in you, Elizabeth, right now. And it's just like, can that be okay? What are you finding, Elizabeth?
Well, yeah, it's totally okay. And it's, that's all I'm doing on this inner journey and in my life is, having companioning these parts. And it feels like the part, there's a, I feel like the part there's a relaxing when I tell the part, it's totally okay to feel that way, and I am here, and you are welcome. I am welcoming you, and you are so welcome. And you can, of course, you feel like that. Of course, you feel like that. I totally get that you feel like that. Like there's feels like the part goes from less separate to more like it's closer with me and to my heart, and it's not suffering anymore.
Beautiful. I have a thought that it might be nice to take a dive in with what Elizabeth just said, those words she just said to her parts. We could take a little journey, a dive together into that, and then come back to anything else that's didn't go to Elizabeth when we come back out of that. But is it anything else? But I don't want to cut off anything that's there for you, Elizabeth. Anything else here?
No, just I'm really, really glad to be here and just really grateful for this type of group. I don't know what it is, but that's just fucking awesome.
Nice. Thank you. 'Cause I loved your words, that the sense of how your parts are being met. I was thinking, God, that could be a gift for us all to go dive into that, what you just shared. So bef before, let's just do it. Unless, is there anything bubbling that like, but Sid, I've got something that needs to be said, or we need to, anything bubbling before we do that, then we'll open it all up afterwards. Anything here? Yes, Susan.
I got one thing coming up, which is I'm on the move tomorrow, and I've been pretty static for a little while, and I get a part that gets quite anxious when I travel, which I haven't investigated that much, but I get anxiety when I travel before the build-up. And then you said, is this, so I was sort of playing with that inside and the self and home, and you said, is this home? Kind of the self, is that home? So, and then I was thinking, does the self even travel in a way? Because I don't know, but I've come across the Headless Way, and it reminded me of that, where I'm the life comes to me. I don't know if any of you know that, but it's really interesting stuff. But anyway, so I sort of got this thing like, yeah, I mean, the self is just a constant home. So are we really traveling? Or I don't know. Anyway, that's kind of what came up for me.
Susan, thank you for pushing the edge for us. Thank you for pushing the edge. I think we can even start with that as well. Oh, Gemma, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Sid, that was a goodbye wave. I've just put a little message in the chat. I'm really sorry. I've just got to leave to go and pick my children up, so I do apologise. But it's been really lovely connecting with you, and I'm hoping to come tomorrow.
Great.
Sid, fingers crossed.
Before you leave, just thank you. Thank you so much for you being you and what you've contributed to our journey today. Wonderful to be with you, Gemma. Thank you.
Yeah, you too, everybody. Lots of love.
See you later.
Bye-bye.
Well, let's just notice, how is self here? How is beingness here for each of us right now? What's it like? What is it? Is it spacious? Is it spaciousness? Is it stillness? Is there stillness here? Is there peace here? Is there okayness, causeless okayness? What's most like causeless okayness that's here? Is there an embodied, alive presence here? How does this show up in the body? How do you know that self is here, that beingness is here? Is it more an equanimity, a peace and openness? Or more an alive presence? Are there any boundaries to this? Is it more Susan's word, this boundlessness? Elizabeth pointed to connectedness. Is there connectedness here? Is there anything separate from this? Or is it just connectedness, effortless connectedness? If we let ourselves just sink into this beingness, the self, and is it boundless, boundless presence? Is there a location to it, or is it just here? As we're with this, as we are here, perhaps as this beingness here, is there a there, or is there only here? Susan speaks of traveling. When you travel, where are you? I'm here. This self, this beingness, always here. And sometimes we might notice this as the background as we start to become aware of what's arising, the precious expressions of life that arise of this, what we call the parts, the thoughts, feelings, and sensations. What's here for you? And Antonio was describing the richness of how it's playing inside of him, how the parts are playing. Raymond describes the many parts that show up. Elizabeth describes this one part that shows up, the Sunday morning part, the sphere of joylessness. What are the two loudest parts that are here for you right now? What are the two loudest parts? like, do you have a spiritual, is it a spiritual achiever, spiritual performer that we heard in Antonio? What are the two loudest? Is it an understanding part? Is it a part that has some kind of some lack and want? Is it a discomfort? Is it a fixer part? Helper part? A part that's kind of helping, oh, we're just going to welcome everything. This is what we're going to do. This is what works. What are the two loudest parts, and where do you hear them? If you can find a location for them, like where are they in your head? Are they out to the right? Are they in your belly? Where do you hear them or feel them or see them? The two loudest parts. Two loudest parts. You be aware of both of them simultaneously. At first, sometimes there's a going back and forth. Can you be aware of both of them? Sometimes we do this by zooming out or by finding a metaphor like a hot tub or a Rumi's guest house, where we can see it as an image. Can you be aware of both of those parts? And then again, what are they arising in? What's the space that's here that they're arising in? And then just some of Elizabeth's words. As we become aware of these parts, and maybe there's some contraction, maybe there's some discomfort, maybe there's some wanting from them. Elizabeth noticed that it was totally okay for them to feel the way they feel. There's beingness in you. Welcome that. Welcome the parts just the way they are, feeling the way they're feeling. Are they welcomed there? Are they welcomed here in you? Elizabeth also had these words, I am here. This sense of this I am, that beingness is here. Can you feel the fullness of that? The fullness of beingness. I am here. I am. This is. Peace is. Love is. And as self is here and the parts are here, can they feel that? Can they feel the presence of self? Elizabeth also had words for this, like, you are so welcomed. Can you find that self, this beingness, just, it so welcomes the parts just the way they are? And then there was a sense of understanding, that this beingness just is understanding. Elizabeth said, of course you feel that way. Of course you feel that way. And you notice that too, that the parts just welcome what's here. Like, of course you feel that way to the parts. There's no resistance to them. There's just Raymond's words, this acceptance. And Raymond described this acceptance is also love. And it's, do you have to do anything for that to be here? Or is that just the nature of this beingness? Of course you feel that way. There's this acceptance, this love, this understanding. And then just to tie Susan's in, this too, is this too can be accepted. Can you find this too? That there's just this open acceptance. So I'm guessing there are other parts that have come up in us as well. We know the two loudest parts have probably been other parts, maybe a helper part, maybe like, oh God, this is going on too long, I'm tired, critic part. What about this too? Can those two be welcomed? Are they just effortlessly welcomed by self? Everything that arises, we heard so many parts in Antonio with this kind of tension, this war, and then Raymond speaks of, oh, so many little parts that show up. Can those two be welcomed? And does anything have to happen? At the same time, you might notice parts that are saying, this is too much. I don't like this. Okay, can we stop now? And can those be welcomed as well? And if it's time, if you've reached capacity and the firefighter's like, this is enough, can those be followed? It's like, okay, I'm going to take a break now. I'm going to go think about something else until Sid finishes. Can it all be welcomed? And then lastly, again, what is welcoming them? What is loving the parts? What is accepting them? Is there any doing here, or is it just the very nature, the yes that you are? And is there any location of this yes, of this welcoming, or is it just here, as Susan pointed to? It's just eternally, ever presently here. As we come back together, yeah, let's just come back together, and I'm gonna shake a little bit because that was a lot. And again, there's nothing we're doing here. We're just hanging out. We're just playing together. We're just exploring and celebrating what's here. Nothing has to be learned or remembered. We're just hanging out with what's here in your system as we come back together. Just breathe for a minute, relax with all of this. Just to notice what responds inside of you, a part that might be like, God, that was a lot. I'm exhausted. I'm not sure I understood all of this, what was happening inside of me, or what do I do with all of this? We just welcome. They just all get to be welcomed, all of these voices, all of our parts. In a moment, we'll go back to Elizabeth as she kind of opened the door for this and see if there's anything that she has, and we'll open it up and see how this is playing for everybody. Anything coming up for you, Elizabeth? How's it going?
I just need a bathroom break and that's it. So I will be right back.
You got it. Oh, how are we doing? Who's got something bubbling? What's that? What was that like? What's happening? Raymond!
So this is very rich today, Sid. And there's lots of wisdom here. Lots of wisdom. And in that space that we're sitting in, literally, it's almost like, I suppose if I had an image of it, it'd be like being in a forest full of fruits. And it's that close that I can just reach up and just take a little bit of wisdom and eat from that. And everybody's producing it. One of the things that Antonio said that sparked off some of this wisdom was about that inner conflict, which I obviously relate to firsthand. And the word that came to me about that is, and I practice this myself, which is surrender. Just, so I'm okay today, and in some other days, I'm okay just to give in and give up. Just surrender. Just don't try and do it. Don't try and fix it. That effortlessness that, you know, is the first E before your IFS, Sid. That effortlessness. And one last point, and it was something that Susan said, which was about, you actually used the phrase trust the process. And the way I would sum up what I'm looking for, what is it I'm looking for? When I say I mean all those little eyes that jump around, and I'm really just even the spiritual rock star in me, I really just want to be seen. And I just want to be heard and understood with no judgment. And that requires a power, not just words, but a real power to be present. And I really sense, so you said, what were the two things, Sid? So for me, I'll just sum them up into one thing. There's a lot of power and wisdom here today for people not to take it away with them. They're already that. That is the isness.
Mm. Power and wisdom that's here today. It's already here, that we already are as this isness, as this beingness, as this self. What do we do with these words of Raymond's? It was like, duh, I know that, of course. Is it like that? Or it's like, whoa, really? Really? It's here now, this power, this wisdom of the self. It's already here. Mm. I got a couple thoughts, but then I'm also very aware of, I'm looking at our friend Antonio that seems to be having some things going on there. We're very aware of that and wanting to fully include that in our journey and in our support and celebration. There was, Raymond mentioned the word surrender. And in his system, sometimes there's a sense of it just can just give in and give up and let it all and not try to fix it. I want to put a big but there. I want to put a big but there. Or often or most of the time, for many or most of us, we have parts that might respond, are you crazy? Are you out of your mind? No. No, I need this. I want this for safety, for connection, for to be seen, to be heard, to be understood, for care, to be welcomed. And so, yeah, and just for us to just to appreciate and include those parts that say no, that say no. Mm. Anything else, Raymond?
Just a final thing. I never finished saying what I was going to say about what Susan said about trust the process. That my brother came up with an acronym for the word trust, which is to rest under severe tension. So to trust is to rest under severe tension. But that trust isn't something that we need to produce. That's also part of the isness. It's already there. So I'll finish with that. Sid, thank you.
Thank you. So the isness just is a sense of trust, the sense of the rest under severe tension. Right? We can all find that in self, right? This beingness that just is. It is this trust. It is this okayness. It is this here. But then we have parts that are like, are you out of your mind? Are you crazy? And just like what Susan was saying, and kind of this too, can those parts be accepted just the way they are, with the like, no, the no to trust. I'm not trusting that. No way. And then there is trust from self that welcomes. And then just to and it just what the other gift of Raymond's when he said that, and if there was one thing that was being looked for from his parts, from the I, which were all the little eyes in his system, he was able to summarize it as what his little eyes were looking for. They want to be seen, they want to be heard, they want to be understood without judgment. Seen, heard, understood, without judgment. Right. Antonio, what's going on? What's happening inside with what's happening?
I don't know. Like I don't know if I have the words for it. It feels still very there's a lot of convulsion, like a lot of intense energy going on. But I felt like really motivated to look for so even if it doesn't feel like there's any trace of self energy, like I even if only I know there I know there is, so I'm just keeping an eye out, like so where could it be? And And you know, I thought, okay, so maybe in the fact that every every little reaction by any different part, each new thought, each new emotion, you know, they're all seen. And even if the feeling of it, you know, there's not a there's no calm, there's no sense of, it's not a, it's not a sensory, it's not a somatic experience of the, there's no, I don't know, like a nice sensation attached to it, but I know that I can tell that there's something that reminds me of self, that I can recognize self in that, in just being able to see whoever pops up. Oh, okay, so okay, here's my cynical part. Okay. This is the part that hates the cynical part. Okay. So I guess that's the okayness, right? Like just seeing whatever and being like, okay. Well, I guess this is this must be what they refer to. Oh, okay. This is the part that needs to be the spiritual rock star, as Raymond just mentioned, which was like, it made me laugh. Like, okay. And then he offered a very compassionate, this part just wants to be seen and understood and listened to. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And so if I'm not facing you guys, if I just need this little bubble or space to. I'm very much present to what's going on. I mean, in the room.
What's that like? As we hear Antonio, we all can relate to this, right? When it's like, oh, I can't find calmness. It's not like this nice experience of self here. I'm not feeling the sensations of peace, these like openness or connected, like, oh, there's a bliss of connectedness here. And like Antonio's like, no, I can't. But there's still a recognition, Antonio says, of self, of some kind of okayness. How are we with that? When you're there, like in my system, that are parts saying, "Oh, this sucks. I want it to be different." You have parts that are like that. When you hear Antonio describe this and you can relate to it in your own system, parts that are like, "Yeah, that's okay, but that's not what we're doing this for. We want the yumminess, right? The peace, the everything. Oh, wow." Funny, I was listening to Ajit Shante in the States this morning, who speaks a lot about all of this, and he was saying, yeah, that's one of the real traps. We're looking for something sexy. We're looking for the sexy. We're looking for the bigness, right, of it. He was saying that, and I wish I'm still looking for my recording. About 5 years ago, I had a conversation with Rupert Spira where I was just so mad at him because I was just like what Antonio was, just where Antonio is with this. It was like the same kind of experience where I was getting, yeah, there's a background of okayness, there's some peace here, there's some of that. But this isn't what you're talking about, Rupert. This is such a disappointment. It's just if we all can relate to that. And then this other thing Antonio speaking, he mentioned, he started off with saying there's an intense energy. There are even some convulsions here. And when we have that, often we can have parts, we can have conflicting interpretations of that. We can have parts like, oh, this is really weird. What's going on here? Why am I shaking? Why is my head doing this? And parts that are like, this is a problem. And others that are like, oh, this is good. There's a release happening. And just to relate to that, when our body starts doing this, like Rupert Spira describes it almost like when we get a joke, when someone tells a joke and you get it and you laugh, It's almost like that with the release. That's how he describes it. But just to notice the way the parts interpret the convulsions that some people call it like Kundalini awakening and release and all of this that occurs, just how interesting it is, how not what other people say, but how our parts interpret it. Anything else, Antonio, of this exquisiteness that you're sharing with us?
No, I don't think so. Just again, like I feel really fortunate to be here and to enjoy the space. Thank you.
Nice. The fortunate to be here and to enjoy this space. Like, what's that like for all of us? Can we feel that a beautiful time? Oh, Raymond, do you need to run? Give us some final words, Raymond. Give us something.
My final word would be that, so I'm filled with a lot of compassion. And I can't help loving you, Antonio, when you're talking about, or Elizabeth, or Susan, or Sid. I think that comes from the nature of self. Again, effortlessly, I'm not claiming this as a personal thing, but I really do. I really feel when people are in pain, and it's not always about getting rid of it, but it is about loving it. It is about loving it. So I'll gently disappear on that part. But I've loved today. I'm really blessed by being with such a beautiful group of people. I'm really touched, and I really love the honesty. I love it. I absolutely love it. Thank you.
Wait, before you go, Raymond, I just want to share that I discovered Raymond on Facebook. He just had these exquisite posts about all of this, and they were so filled with love. I was like, who are you? Please come hang out with us, and please come. And I got him to come to the IFS non-dual community, and he posts sometimes there, and I just enjoy him so much, and just the treat having you with us today.
Thank you, Sid, and thank you everyone else. I've really enjoyed meeting you and feeling you today. Lovely, really lovely. Thank you. Namaste.
See you later. Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Wow, we've got like 12 minutes left, and to see what's here now with the four of us. And Susan, how's this going for you? Anything else bubbling? And maybe this is our closure. We can see what's here for us.
So just a couple of things, I think. So in terms of what Antonio was talking about, I remember a time when if there were quite a lot of parts up, I'd be totally blended. And for a little while, recently in the last year, 2, 3, I don't know, I sort of lose track, don't you? But I've been able to keep that kind of, even if it's the thinnest aspect of, it's not even thin. I don't think it is. I think it's actually when self is strongest. Because the fact that self can kind of be there when there's so much going on, it's just a bloody miracle in my life. It's changed. I've been through some tough times, you know, not really tough, but yeah, no, quite challenging times in the last little while. And but I wouldn't say they were, the suffering involved is like nothing compared to what it would be without that self energy. And it had, and as I say, I don't even know if it's a thin self energy. I think it's when it's thickest. Because it almost has to rise even more higher above all that noise and distress or whatever of parts. So actually it's perhaps when it's strongest. But I mean, it's a miracle. It's a miracle in my life that that's been there. And although the parts are still distressed, there's distress in a certain way, it just changes everything. Because it's not distress in the way it would have been once. It's not suffering in the way it was. I mean, what a bloody miracle that is, really. Ooh, I'm so grateful for that myself. So when you said there's that okayness, and it's not, yeah, you're not having a full embodied alive presence, you know, that's easy when you've got nothing else going. My life's quite, at the moment, just for the moment, it's fairly, but but when I've got stuff going on, if I can, you know, that bit of that just changes everything. I really think it does. So good for you, Antonio, and good for me and everyone here, I imagine. So, and the only other thing that came up was self is, so I was sort of playing with that again in your guided bit, Sid, which was lovely. And self is everywhere. So self is here and self is everywhere. So of course one doesn't travel anywhere away from that, because I've been playing with this idea that I'm traveling and I get anxious. And so that was, you know, I'll see how that plays out tomorrow and as I'm traveling the next few days, and it's kind of cool. Thank you.
Really, for your parts that are the ones that have the anxiousness, right? That are like looking for, but we're leaving home. It's like, wait a minute, home is south is here, it's here. And like if they can find that, if they can find that they kind of almost they're always being held, that those beautiful words of Elizabeth's are always, or is this too, that self is always, it's that. I was listening to, with what you just said to Antonio and what you're exploring. I was listening to this wonderful conversation this morning between John, Shante, Rupert Sparrow, and John Pendergrass. They were being kind of interviewed together. And Rupert was a little radical in this, because he said if he was writing a book, the first chapter would be just getting to know our true nature, getting to know this ever-present self that you're just talking about here, Elizabeth, that we've all been talking about, and getting to know this. But then all the other chapters are the integration of that into our lives, into our real lives, and then the welcoming and the healing and the updating that occurs. And so I am so grateful to Antonio's nakedness in describing what's happening, because I think it's very easy. We're so used to parts to come in thinking that what we want is this relief, this okayness on the surface. And so we kind of hold, you know, we in IFS, we call it exiling. We hold the parts down, we push them down. But as we all know, the rest of the chapters of Rupert's book are everything that's been pushed down, it gets to come up and be welcomed home. And it might be like, God, that's a lot of work to do. I don't want to, you know, it's a lot of work, it's painful, it's awkward. But then really, these are aspects of us that don't know that okayness is here. They're parts that are in the corner, that are hidden, that feel like they're in jail, that are carrying all this weight and pain. It's like, this is where Dick Schwartz talks about that IFS is like being this inner bodhisattva, like we're welcoming all of us home. And so at first it'd be like, you know, parts of us are like, I really don't want to do this. I just want to stay in the bliss of being. But then after a while, we just like, no, of course we want to rescue the kids. We want to welcome the kids home, which is what Antonio is pointing to and leading us in today. And it just becomes, of course, we want to do that. But while we're doing it, right, we have lots of parts that aren't so happy with it. Like, this sucks. I don't like this. I don't want to feel that. Oh my God, to feel that shame that's here. I don't want, you know, or to feel the wrongness that's here. I don't want to feel that. But it's like, but then of course we want to welcome them home. That's kind of a Sid riff. That's how it all makes sense to me. How are you guys doing with this? We got 5 minutes left. Yeah, Antonio.
I don't think I've ever heard a a more accurate description of that reality of how well we have a first-hand experience of the okayness, self-energy, whatever you want to call it. There are parts within us that have no clue that is available, that is within reach, that was never within, and they seem to inhabit a place from where that is not reachable. And exactly like you said, in our process of going back there and learning how to show them that all of these protectors will come up and fight us and of course, because it feels really it's challenging, and So yeah, I just, the way you yeah, I just love that.
Oh, yes. Yeah, something just occurred to me. Did I forget to do my little housekeeping thing today? Oh my God. Okay. I'm gonna do it real quick with us, and then I'll shoot a message to our two friends. I'm a mediator, not a psychotherapist. If everybody's good being responsible for their journeys today, if I could get a thumbs up, please. And then I've got this recorded. Only my square will ever be shared. If everybody's good that this might be shared electronically, if I could get a thumbs up, please. Awesome. Okay, 3 minutes. Thank you, Antonio, thank you for what you just shared. Thank you for that. And any kind of final words from us, from Elizabeth, Susan, Antonio? And how are you? 'Cause just to have a gentle landing, right? This was a wild ride today. This was a wild ride with where we went. It's for your parts as we move towards closure that they can have a gentle landing in the sense of okayness. And notice that there are any parts that are like, that was too much. That was a little too much. I'm uncomfortable. I don't like this. There's any parts that have resistance or a little scared about, oh God, where are we going now? What's this gonna like being with everything that's here, with the war that's going on inside? We're gonna have to feel all that by ourselves and not have our friends here with us. We could just hear any parts that have any trepidation or concerns. And as we're aware of them, if we let them be met with what Elizabeth was pointing out, like, of course you're feeling that. It's so okay. You're so welcomed. I understand. Everything inside of us just gets to be welcomed just the way it is. From this self, from this beingness that has no problem. There's no problem here. Anything that comes up, any resistance, any no, just notice that it's all welcomed by the nature of you, by the nature of this yes, by the nature of this self. And as always, if it's ever, it's like, whoa, this was too much, just message me on Facebook, send me a voice memo or an email voice memo. None of us are alone in this. We're all in this together. We're all in this together. Oh, such a treat. Such a treat being with you today. And thank you lastly for, again, how, if you think about where we went today, how we all like co-led, co-facilitated, co-created. Thank you for that. Such a pleasure, and I hope to see you soon. We'll miss you, Susan. Bye.
Yeah, Susan, thanks so much.
you.
Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks,
Oh,
everybody.
Bye.
bye. Oh, bye, Elizabeth.